and thank you all so much for joining us for this session. My name is Joyce, and I'll be moderating this session. I'm glad to welcome Erinn Aspinall and Janice Jaguszewski. They will be presenting Leading in Complexity, Strategies and Tools for Understanding and Navigating Tensions, Facilitating Greater Dialogue and Understanding, and Making Hard Decisions. Before we get started, let's go over a few logistical items. This session is being recorded, and captions are available during this session by clicking on the Live CC button at the bottom of your Zoom window. And thank you to Joseph Lang for providing the captions today. We ask you to use the Q&A feature for any presentation questions. And you can choose to do this anonymously. There will be 10 to 15 minutes for the Q&A session at the end of our presentation today. Billy Cotterman will be handling technical issues for this session, and Billy will also be adding some links into the chat. One of the documents she will link to is for collaborative resource sharing. If you think of a related reading, podcast, video, or something else, please share it with us in Calm's recommended resources shared Zotero. And we also want to call attention to our conference code of conduct. So now Diane Smothers from the steering committee would like to give us an important code of conduct reminder.
Hi, everyone. So I just wanted to give a little reminder that as we approach the end of this conference, we want to remind everyone of the Calm Code of Conduct. Please remember that this extends to all conference spaces, including our session evaluations. We are all here to learn together, and we hope everyone can engage in feedback in that spirit of kindness and growth. We are very sorry to share that some of the comments we've received on presentation feedback forms so far don't exemplify the spirit of Calm. And some of them are straight up insulting, mean-spirited, or derogatory. We ask that you please remember that words have impact, and that while constructive and challenging criticism is welcome, if you can't abide by that, please refrain from leaving comments. Thank you for your care and your attention. And now I'll turn this over to our presenters.
Thank you, Diane. I really appreciate that reminder messaging. I really appreciate the language you used in sharing that. And I hope that we can also continue that in our conversation today. So hello and welcome. And in this session, we're going to be coming together as a community of practice. So I really love that reinforcement of that code of conduct here. And we're going to be presenting tools that help us all lead in complexity. So my name is Erinn Aspinall, and I am the director for the Health Sciences Libraries at the University of Minnesota. I'm coming into this conversation as a practitioner. I work in a large, complex university libraries where I lead a team of individuals. I work collaboratively to bring forth projects that span departments and divisions, and I advance our partnerships with 6 schools and colleges of the health sciences. And I've learned, sometimes the hard way, to love to work in complexity because it really honors my goal of building bridges for the greater good. And in this context, I'm actually going to be joining you as a persona, as a manager of a branch library. And I'm going to be sharing a case study that will help ground our conversation and our practice today.
Thanks, Erinn, and thanks to everyone for joining us today and joining our community of practice. I'm Janice Jaguszewski, and I formed Janice J Consulting in 2021 after a 30-year career with the University of Minnesota Libraries. I had a wide variety of management and leadership positions there and spent the last 9 years as an associate university librarian, or that's kind of equivalent to an associate dean position. I learned more about leading in complexity when I earned a certificate in human systems dynamics. And that is a framework that Erinn and I are going to be sharing today. it really, it kind of gave me a framework for what I was experiencing, but didn't have words for or tools. And so once I learned about this in more detail, I've really been using it in my consulting practice to help individuals and organizations thrive. So Erinn and I are going to be sharing these ideas and approaches from what we call HSD with you today. We're going to be sharing some theories and content, just a little bit, conversing with one another as we really explore the sticky kind of management issue that Erinn's going to present. And then we're going to invite all of you to participate and practice some of the tools that we're going to be demonstrating. We think that the learning really happens best when you practice. We also recognize that we're introducing some things that may be very new terminology. And so we welcome you to follow along with us with our presentation and our handout, which are available online. Erinn has got that link in chat so that you have that information to take away with you, because this is going to be new. We'd like to start by just sharing some brief background about complexity and how it relates to leadership and the decision-making processes that all of you experience in your day-to-day work. So it starts with this whole concept that individuals are complex. If any of you read the book Stroke of Insight by Jill Bolt Taylor, she talks about how we like to think of ourselves as thinking beings who sometimes feel, but we're actually feeling beings who sometimes think. And so we're just incredibly complicated. We have the head and the heart that come into play with anything we do every single day. So we might hold strong opinions. We can be confused. We can be filled with emotion without understanding why. We have underlying biases that we may not be aware of. We can become more aware of those biases and grow and develop over our lifetime. So hopefully we all have a growth mindset, we change. And we can have empathy for other people and their experiences, and that can change what we think. So as leaders, our awareness of the complexity of each individual on a team or in an organization is just critical. It's essential. And that complexity holds so much promise for everything that your team does, but it also can introduce challenges. So you start with the individual, complex individual, you bring a group of individuals together into an organization, and then you've got layers and structures within that organization, and you increase the level of complexity from units to departments to divisions to libraries. And then you think about the larger environment in which each of us operates. So we're really thinking then about the kind of persistent change that is happening all the time. The business world kind of started using that terminology, VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. But honestly, that has spread, and it is everywhere, and it affects us in higher ed and in libraries as well. You think about the changes that each of us has been through, even in the last year. Nothing has remained static. We're constantly trying to pivot and take in more information because things are always changing. So we think about the pandemic and its repercussions. We think about the progress that we believe we've made with respect to racism or sexism or homophobia, and then the backlash that has resulted. We think about climate change. We're all experiencing things right now in terms of the wildfires in Canada. And political polarization. So we think about all of these factors that are affecting our environments, are affecting the way we interact with one another. And it's really important to remember that. So the idea of working and living in complexity is that we no longer are thinking of ourselves in a linear sort of world where we set a goal in year 1 and we work our way toward achieving it by, say, year 5. We're constantly needing to scan the environment and consider what has changed, what is changing, and respond accordingly in an iterative way. And so that's what Erinn and I are going to be talking about. We want to dig in and explore what this means for each of us as a leader. How do we navigate this ourselves as leaders? And how do we help our teams navigate it in a kind and supportive way? And just at the top, we want to make a distinction between being nice and being kind. I think particularly for those of us who are new to leadership, particularly for women and leaders of color, many of us have been socialized to be nice, to be agreeable, to be likable. We all want to be liked, and to avoid conflict or to kind of tiptoe around big issues. And we're really going to talk about using some tools to help surface these issues and find really constructive ways to work through them together within your organizations. And for you to then work in a kind way, emphasizing trust, deep listening, being transparent in communication, and helping a group recognize and work through difficult conversations on possibly hard topics. So this is kind of our overview. Erinn's going to present her sticky issue. We're going to show you some tools, work through it a little, and then we're going to invite you into practice and help work through this as well. We wanted to state up front that there are a number of benefits. You can make progress on issues that seem intractable. Issues that are really big, you can't just solve them in one fell swoop, but you can make progress. And as I said, it can be iterative as you're looking at the complexity in the environment. It can help facilitate greater dialogue and understanding. The tools can help you move away from being stuck on what is wrong and help focus on seeing and exploring possibilities. And you can surface and tackle the elephants in the room. So we just like to say at the top, we'd like to hold questions to the end so that you have enough time to practice. So thank you.
Thank you, Janice. Thank you for grounding us again in this conversation and how we're going to move through some sticky issues together. And again, this is our community of practice today. So welcome, Janice. Welcome, community of practice. I'm going to jump right in and share my sticky issue. And then we're going to be using that to have conversations together, practicing 2 tools today. I manage a branch library and it has a team of around 20 people. And my leadership recognizes that not all of our work looks the same and has empowered our individual managers to decide how to interpret their hybrid work policy. Most of my manager peers are shaping the policy based on the type of work that their employees do, and I'm doing the same. And I really appreciate that I'm trusted to make these decisions, but to be honest, things aren't working really well. I want to share a little bit about that context. About half of my employees are career staff, and they provide really important on-site work, but have little flexibility in their place of work. The other half are librarian staff and can largely do their work from anywhere. My career staff are getting more and more frustrated that they are carrying the burden of that on-site work and that they're being asked to do some of that on-site work on behalf of my staff who have greater flexibility from where they work. I'm also seeing different needs between my newer staff who are mostly early career and my employees who have been here a longer term. 3 of my newer hires have already left my library, and in conversations with them, they have shared that they weren't feeling connected to the library and its purpose, that they weren't getting the support they needed and as they really started their career. And I'm taking that to heart. At the same time, my long-term employees are really thriving. They appreciate the trust that are given to work independently and really love that autonomy to take their work and see it through. So I'm really worried that requiring them to return to work right now would break that trust and make them angry. So I'm in this situation where I want to honor those individual needs in a time where I'm being asked to be accountable for moving forward some organizational priorities with my team, especially as we're starting a new strategic plan. And I'm finding this harder and harder to do because people are showing signs of being disconnected to their work and to each other. So I know things aren't going well, and I just don't know what to do. I really need help getting unstuck here in my thinking and in coming to this community of practice to help me find a next step.
Thanks, Erinn, for sharing that. You are not alone. There are many organizations who are grappling with the exact same issues. I appreciated how you describe this, because what I hear are lots of different perspectives. And I think it's interesting to think about those perspectives as truths, different kinds of truth. Each person has their own truth and their own experience. And what's important is to kind of step back and look at all those perspectives as you are, but probably digging in a little more detail. And I'm wondering, in order to think about possibilities, if we could use the power of tools, the power of questions, which is a tool, to really engage in inquiry and to really broaden our perspective and see possibilities. And what I love about being able to engage in this environment with our community here is that we can really open it up and get lots of ideas and lots of questions. So I'd like to actually try this if you're interested. The whole idea is that you turn judgment into curiosity, and it's really easy when you're stuck to feel like you're standing in judgment. To turn disagreement into shared exploration, to turn defensiveness into self-reflection. And I think that's a really big one. I think often we can feel triggered by something, we don't even know why, and we may respond more quickly than we should. And to kind of recognize what's happening in our bodies when we're feeling triggered, and to think, I'm feeling defensive. Why is that? What is going on here? And to do some self-reflection, and to turn assumptions into questions. And I think that is a really also key way to approach conversations and sticky issues. And so what do you think of that? Are you game?
Okay, so as you are sharing these benefits of the power questions, my mind is actually going to those first words in the pairs. So I'm hearing judgment, disagreement, defensiveness, and assumptions. And so I'm really realizing that this process is going to require that self-reflection that you mentioned. And then I'm going to have to be open to hearing things that might be hard to hear. So thank you for helping me engage in this conversation, because I don't think I could do that by myself.
Okay, so here's our process. And we're adjusting it a little bit because we're here in a very large group, but Erinn's going to start by just succinctly describing her sticky issue and what really has her stuck in 3 to 5 sentences. And then typically she would just be quiet. She's going to be quiet. If you're doing this online, you can, the person who presents the sticky issue can mute themselves. And then everyone else in the group is going to engage in asking that individual question. So we are going to develop kind of generative, open-ended questions for Erinn. What's really hard is that we're going to try to avoid giving her advice in our questions, like, did you think of doing X? is not the type of question we want to ask. We want to ask, just be really curious about what's going on in this situation for Erinn and for others who are involved in it. We also want to avoid sharing personal experiences at this point. We're just going to generate questions. I'm going to start by putting some questions into the chat and reading them out loud. And then after I give you a sense of how to develop these questions, I'm going to invite everyone to begin to contribute. So Erinn's just going to listen. She's not going to reply. We'll do this for about, I think we've got at least a good 5 minutes to give you all time to think of your questions and to contribute them, and for people to be able to read them. I'll try and read some of them aloud. And then we're going to turn the session back over to Erinn, and she is going to that she's going to let this all wash over her, and then she's going to respond and tell us what she thinks, what resonated with her in reflecting on some of these questions, what was most meaningful, and what might she do next. So that's how it's going to work. So Erinn, if you want to just summarize.
Sure. So I'm going to take that longer story I shared earlier, and I'm going to try to make it, I'm going to try to hit the highlights that are really making me feel a little bit like I don't know where to go next. And here goes. I'm a manager in an organization that empowers leaders to determine how to apply a hybrid work policy. And I've been applying this policy based on the type of work people do. Some of my employees are very happy and thriving, and some are disengaged and they're becoming resentful. And I'd love to apply this policy in a way that makes everyone happy, but I have to weigh all sorts of things, individual needs. I have to think about that. I have to make sure I keep in alignment with my other managers. I also have to make sure I keep on making meaningful partnerships with our user community. And I'm having to move forward some organizational priorities. So I keep running different scenarios in my head and trying to address these needs, and I just can't find a solution or a place to start.
Okay. What stories are you telling yourself about your direct reports? What stories are you telling yourself about library leadership and the hybrid policy that they developed? What assumptions does each employee group have about the others? Oh, and they're asking, I'm going to, after I demonstrate a number of these questions, then I will invite everyone to contribute as well. So we're just going to try this out for a few questions, and then we'll expand it. What does each, oops, I'm going to put it in here. What does each group want the other group to know about them? What do people want and what do people need? And is there a difference? What are the tensions that exist in this situation and how can they be surfaced? What are the possibilities? Think of all the range of possibilities. And I'm just realizing, is this not, this is going to host some panelists. It hasn't been going to the whole group, has it? Sorry, I just realized that. Okay, so I've been asking these questions and I'm just going to put them all in at one time. Here we go. What are the possibilities and what are the risks of not doing something? I'd also like to ask, what's trust got to do with it? I'd like to, at this point, and I'm sorry, I didn't realize this wasn't going to everyone. So look at these questions, you've heard them, but I'd also like to invite everyone else now in our community of practice to also add to this list and to generate some questions for Erinn to consider. Okay. Have you been collecting statistics? And if so, what do the stats say about productivity and user needs? Let's see. What aspects of your mission are most broadly shared and agreed upon in the organization? What unmet need might be behind people's preferences? Are people's job duties properly aligned to their preferences for where they work? Are other managers having the same issues? What priorities are most important to your employees? Have you created opportunities for dialogue among your employees about these issues? What can you share to be more transparent in the decision-making process to assist with group assumptions and without breaking confidences in personal needs? What are your library values and how might they help you make your decision? Are there peers you can discuss this with who have been in similar situations and pilot those experiences in your library? And do all workers understand that remote work is a privilege, not a right? These are wonderful questions. There's lots of others. I could only grab a few. We're going to save this chat and we will put it into our folder so that you all have these questions. But now, Erinn, we're going to turn this over to you. What resonated with you?
So this is actually really helpful, Janice. When you started asking the questions, and as our community kind of joined in this process, I felt myself actively reframing, and I actually had a kind of the same kind of reaction in my body. I could tell there was a shift going on, and I love the questions from our community around values and vision and how those could be used to leverage a conversation and add that transparency and open opportunities for dialogue. So I love all of those questions there. And I also love the questions around peers and talking to other managers to kind of see where they're at in their thinking, and maybe there could be something done collaboratively, or at least we could learn from each other. And looking at those original questions that you posed, I really loved the questions around stories and assumptions, because I think I am bringing a lot of this into my work, and I see that happening with my team as well. And it's helping me do a little reflection here on considering the what. So what is the source of these stories? Are they accurate? And is there information that's missing that could help us rewrite these stories in our work together? I really loved your questions about tensions and how can they be surfaced, because I'm thinking a little more about the why. What are the tensions and what is that impact on our work? Why do I feel limited in my choices? Why are people disengaged? What is being perceived as unfair? And maybe how can I start addressing some of these tensions as a way to kind of dispel those stories and assumptions that I'm seeing in our work? I also loved a pairing of two of the questions you shared. One was, what are the risks of not doing something? And I'm going to pair that with, what are the possibilities? This helps me kind of think about the why now. What is kind of prompting me to maybe feel some urgency around this, and what could be a small, incremental, manageable change that could help us move forward? And what I love about the question about what are the possibilities is it's reframing this for me into the positive, because I've been so stuck in the negative that thinking of the possibilities is making me feel excited, that feeling it in my body for the first time in a really long time. I believe you said at the end of the power questions is I have to decide a next step. So I think that what I'm seeing here is a story around tensions. And I think my next step should be exploring those tensions and discovering a little bit why they are impacting our work together. So I'm going to take as a next step, a closer look at the tensions that I'm seeing.
Right. I think that's a fabulous next step. I'm excited to see what you see.
Okay. In thinking about my sticky situation, I think there are a lot of tensions actually, and I'm going to get started here, but I'm going to ask our community to join in because I'm sure I'm not seeing everything that I need to see. I see three major tensions that are leading to some of the stickiness of my situation. I see a tension between individual needs and organizational needs, especially with that strategic plan that's on our horizon and now like being part of our work. I see the tension between my career staff and my librarian staff and playing out in the different kind of flexibility that is provided to each of these groups. And I see a tension really between my early career and mid-career employees, and they have different needs. And how do I meet those needs? So I would love to now see what other tensions our community might have. I love this one, the way we've always done it versus the unknown. Thank you. So this may take a little time to think, but as you have any ideas around tensions in this situation, please feel free to add some ideas into chat. Student needs versus staff needs. Flexibility and consistency. Patron and staff needs, belonging and not belonging. Personal values versus professional values. Equity and inequity. Day shift, night shift. Institutional needs, individual interests, visible and invisible work. Great. Manager needs, staff needs. I think I've caught most of the chat that's come through. Oh, introvert, extrovert, personal, political. These are great. Innovative versus traditional. And I'll use that in quotes because it's our core work that we've done too. That's very important. So there's a lot happening in this space. And looking at these tensions, there's a lot. And right now I'm feeling some of the most pressing tensions that I have to deal with right now is one that exists between individual and organizational needs. So keep those ideas going in the chat. I think that will help us all kind of unpack some of the tensions and stickiness that happen in not only in this situation, but in many of the situations that come to us as leaders in libraries. All right, so keep that going, Janice. I think I'm going to focus on the tension between individual needs and organizational needs, and I'm going to look at them as interdependent pairs.
Great. So tell me more.
Okay. So interdependent pairs really just describe normal tensions and contradictions that exist within every organization. They are two ends of a continuum that support a larger common purpose. And I really like to think of interdependent pairs by thinking of taking a breath. As you breathe in, you bring in oxygen, and then you breathe out, you release carbon dioxide. And that cycle continues, and it changes based on what your body needs in the moment. and they both serve the common purpose of sustaining life. So you can see from thinking about taking a breath and the interdependent pairs in that situation between inhale, exhale, oxygen, and carbon dioxide, that they're not problems. They're not problems because problems can be solved, and they're not either good or bad. They're not either or. They're not right or wrong. They each end has a positive, and they're both viable options depending on the context. So as we are leaders in this complex environment and we're dealing with all these tensions, and you can see there's more than one tension in any given situation, that our goal is to access the benefits of both and minimize the risks of either. And to be mindful that when you make a shift between these interdependent pairs, all those other tensions that you have highlighted here might also shift, and you might have to pay attention to those as well as you're making these changes. I'm going to dive in a little bit more from the perspective of being a manager and look into that organizational needs and the balance with individual needs of my staff. And I really do. I see such value in both of those. Focusing on individual needs really values the person and their expertise, allows for flexibility, and it builds trust. And that focus on organizational needs helps us tie our work to our purpose. It helps us resource our work better, and it helps us advance those strategic priorities, whether they're big or small, or just moving things forward together. And I see that there's risks on either side too, and that swinging too far in either direction could both result in anger. And I don't want that. I don't want that for me, and I don't want that for my team, and I don't want that for my organization. So I really want to honor both, but I see that we are kind of seeing more of those risks in favoring the individual needs at this moment in time. And that's at the expense of honoring those organizational needs. And I'm going to try to address that now with my team, especially in that context of our strategic plan, because I'm going to have to get that work started. Oh, so Janice, do you remember when we were doing the power of questions, I discussed maybe trying to find that small, incremental, meaningful change my team and I can move forward together? I kind of have an idea here. So I think I'm going to take this interdependent pair exercise to my team, and I got started here exploring kind of the risks and benefits. I think we're going to expand on that together, because I think that would be so helpful in building some common language and understanding so we can actually engage in that conversation rather than avoid it. And that goes back to some of the power of questions that came through our chat. You know, what are our values and our vision, and where can we have some transparency to lessen those assumptions that are coming into our work? And because right now the context is around our strategic plan, I think I'm going to set that as our context and have my team kind of understand it in that space. So as we are trying to move a little bit closer to those organizational needs in this particular moment, I can see there's so many ways to get there. And I would love to have that conversation with my team, and we can explore those options together. And then because we've had this open dialogue, it will set the stage for future conversations, because I know we're going to have to continue to make these adjustments over time as our context changes.
That's great. I love how you're moving back and forth among the tools. You know, we could do it the other way, and you could work with your staff to say, you know, I'm sensing that there are tensions in this situation, and invite them to really help surface them, because that will really reveal what they're experiencing, and then engage in a power of questions with them, and have them start to explore what are all the possibilities. How can we open this whole situation up and begin to understand one another and surface those assumptions? So that's terrific. I love that approach, Erinn, for dialogue. So you just made really great points about what leaders bring to an organization. And I think, you know, the word that we need to use is reframe. To reframe when we're feeling like we're in tension or in conflict. Also helping everyone understand that tensions are normal, they're natural. You absolutely have to have lots of difference and lots of complexity in an organization in order to innovate and to move forward. Sometimes there are organizations that are too similar, and where there isn't enough diversity of thought or experience or identity, and they stagnate. So this is all an important element of an organization. And then helping people reframe and seeing, well, what are the tensions and how can they be framed as interdependent pairs, so that we can see, even if you as a leader are leaning toward one end, recognizing that there are other viable options, and really valuing them and letting your staff know that you value them. That's an important piece of being a leader here. And then understanding the benefits and risks of each. I love your idea about having them help surface that. I think it really does help people expand their perspective, and recognizing when each is most important, that you're really helping people slide back and forth on the two ends of a continuum based on the context, and context is always changing. I think that's also something that staff sometimes need to expand and understand, which is that sometimes when leadership makes a decision, they want to hold them to it. And recognizing and helping people realize that we're working in ambiguity, we're working in change, and sometimes those decisions that are made need to change as well, and it depends on the context. So if you get, you know, lots of money from a donor who needs something specific, you may have to move closer to the organization's needs to put that attention and time toward it, and basically recognize that at another time we're going to have to move farther to the other side and say, now, how do we support our staff in realizing this new vision that this donor wants? So you're moving back and forth. I also love the idea of working with staff to generate as many possibilities as possible. And it's also important at the very end to make a judgment about what is most appropriate at any given time, because at some point a decision really has to be made. And it could be that not everyone agrees with it, but I guess what's super important is that we engage in inquiry and multimodal communication, that we're listening deeply. We're ensuring that everyone has a voice, and not only that everyone has a voice, but that you have heard it, that we as leaders have heard those voices and we have considered what people have said. That is also really a fundamental part of developing trust, relationships, a back and forth, and being as transparent as possible about your reasoning, and then explaining why you must adjust over time. We talked at the beginning about the difference between being nice and being kind, and thinking about kind as asking questions, helping the group engage in inquiry and normalize it. That I know in the past, when I was working in an organization, we had a leader who really believed in inquiry and wanted to normalize it. And at first it was really threatening to people to be asking questions, because they felt that it was actually a lack of trust. And it took a while to adjust, to realize questions are so important. I cannot read your mind. And if I try to, I will likely come up with the wrong idea. So asking questions and normalizing it, surfacing assumptions, so important, and collaboratively navigating tensions together. And then being clear and direct, but in a supportive and person-centered way. Sometimes you have to have really difficult conversations, but you can do it in a way that is supportive. You want everyone's success, and you're helping people move forward. what I was going to say earlier was at the end of the day, that decision has to be made. And you need to ensure that your employees know, that your staff know that you've heard them, you've considered their ideas and input. The decision that's made may or may not be the one that they had hoped for. But you hope and you expect that they will then support that decision and help move it forward. And I think by engaging this kind of dialogue, when people realize that they need to listen to it, and not everyone is going to always be in agreement. But at the end of the day, things need to move forward. And I think it's a better way to do it.
Great. Thanks, Janice, and thank you to our community of practice. At the start of this conversation, I was really stuck. Decision-making is hard. And I know I was trying to find a solution that would make everyone happy. And in reality, this isn't possible. And that's why I really love what you said about nice versus kind. It's great to have a reminder that leaders can make hard decisions in a way that centers people. And I'm so glad that you reinforced that message today. And I'm glad to have these tools in my toolkit. I'm going to keep them in my back pocket and continue using them as a way of normalizing inquiry as part of a regular work with my team. Okay, so we are at our close, and we're going to be opening up for questions. Before I get there, I just want to encourage all of you to go to our handouts, where it will give you a framework to help you apply the power of questions and interdependent pairs to your own sticky situation. And you can actually practice a little bit what you learned today. And Janice and I do this together on the regular, and power of questions have been becoming kind of part of our normal questions and process together. So when we come to a sticky issue, you can hear those kind of non-judgmental, suggestive questions coming our way. Like, we are not trying to find or influence, but we are trying to provide questions for each other to help us reframe. And I think you can probably do that in your work life or your family life or your whatever life you want to apply that to. And you are welcome to contact us with questions at any time using the contact that's provided in our slides. So we're welcome to have questions. I think we have a Q&A moderator here today. Is there anything that you would like us to address?
That's right. Thank you very much, Erinn and Janice, for your excellent presentation. We do have some good questions here in the Q&A, so I'll just read them out to you in the order that they were received. First question, have you considered that some employees' personal values and needs no longer align with the organizations or the libraries?
Do you want to start? Or?
Well, I think that's important to think about right now in this moment. We've all had experiences where we've been prompted to rethink our lives in lots of meaningful ways. And I think it's true that many of us have come to the conclusion that the work that we're doing, the place of work that we're at, just no longer is a good match. And I think that's true. And we're seeing that because people are making choices about where they work and how they work. And I think we'll continue to see that shifting over time. And Janice, please add to that.
No, that's exactly what I was thinking. And I think that especially after all that we've been through over the last 3 years, we've all been reevaluating. Lots of people have pivoted. I pivoted. And really thinking about, what do I need from, we spend a lot of time at work. We spend a lot of time doing our work. What do we need from it? And I think that's also reflected in your sticky issue, really, Erinn. And for some, it's going to mean that they need to make a change. But otherwise, it's really surfacing that and understanding it and seeing, is there some solution? Or, sorry, there's a solution. Eventually there is, to navigating attention and saying, can we come up with some sort of in between that might meet some of your needs and might meet some of ours. But for other people, I have known in the past when we have had a really big dramatic change, like, for instance, we were shutting down our library. We were part of a big renovation and a brand new building, and really reconceived what a health sciences library was. Our entire print collection went into storage. That prompted a number of people to say, I'm ready for retirement. This is not, I'm not ready to pivot in this way and make such dramatic changes. And so, or other people decided that they wanted a different environment. So yes, you want to align people as much as possible with what the organization needs and what their values are and their strengths and their skills and their interests.
Okay, next question. How much time did or would this exercise or case study take to move through all of the steps?
Really takes 30 minutes, honestly. And I'm engaged, this Human Systems Dynamics group. They offer inquiry sessions every single day online. People from all over the world come. It's 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Central Time. And if you're interested, I will add that information to our resources. And they engage in a power of questions. One individual asked it. So it lasts 30 minutes. It's typically 10 minutes to ask the questions, and then about 10 minutes for the individual to think through what they've heard, to talk about it. And then we, at the very end, will have some time when each of us is dying to just share an experience or give some advice. We'll leave a little room for that at the end. But it's a great way to practice. Although honestly, I just love all the questions that you all have developed here on the fly. Really appreciate that. I saw that some people mentioned that it reminds them of appreciative inquiry. Absolutely, David Cooper-Ryder. We are big appreciative inquiry fans. So many of these tools are very interconnected. So love that. And yeah. It really doesn't have to take much time. And I think that's really what's so wonderful about it. And then if you use it as in an ongoing sort of way, it becomes easier and easier as people practice.
Yeah. And we saw it in real time kind of happen today. Of course, we practiced this, but it's not that much different when you practice it outside of this type of.
Erinn mentioned that we do this. There was one time where she called and said, I'm really stuck. And I said, I'll meet you over by the Mississippi River, and we're in Minneapolis, meet you at the river. And we did a walk and talk one evening. And she presented her sticky issue and I asked her questions, and it was just the two of us. Now it's really, really helpful when you've got a group like this, because there were so many questions. So when you can use your team, there's so much power in crowdsourcing.
Okay, how do we help people understand that decisions might need to change based on the change or ambiguity that we face when what they want is stability?
Yes. You're helping them navigate it. And absolutely. And stability is important. If anyone has done Clifton Strengths or a strengths-based leadership, that's one of the key 4 things that employees want from their supervisors is stability, trust, compassion. There's another one. And so that is important. So in that regard, I would be helping them see what is not changing, because there's plenty that is not. So really helping people. And again, so you've kind of got, I think people had listed that as an interdependent pair. You've got kind of the new and moving forward, and you've got the traditional, or the, I guess that was core work, but the innovation. And so often you're bridging it. And people tend to focus on what is difficult for them or what they fear, especially if it's unknown. That's the way our brains have evolved. We see it as a threat. So we tend to focus on it, and we don't see a lot of the other things in our environment. So we don't see what is remaining consistent. Our boss is still here. Our colleagues are still here. Much of my work is not changing. I am still doing X, Y, or Z. I'm still in this environment. I'm working with these departments or whatever it is, to recognize what is not changing. And then to also, it is constant conversation. I think as Erinn was describing, it's really talking about it and helping people through it. It takes time. people move at different speeds. Some people love change and they're excited by it, and some people do not. And I think understanding, and that's where you see the individual in front of you and what they need and helping them through it. Sorry, Erinn, if you.
Well, I would just add to that I think using some of these tools like interdependent pairs and normalizing those conversations are really helpful, because then you can be more upfront about it. You can share from the start that here's where we are right now. Here's the best information we have. Here's the context that we're working in. And we know, because we've experienced the last 2 years plus, that context is changing all the time, and we're going to have to navigate that. And so I'm all about normalizing conversations and bringing people into that work.
There's an article, which we'll also add now that I'm thinking of it, called Leadership is a Conversation. I think might be Harvard Business Review. But it says something like, the issue isn't communication. We always say it's communication. The issue is trust. And so the communication is help building that trust. And the more there is trust that people are going to get through this, we're going to get to a place where we feel again some level of security and stability. What is changing about your job and what is not. To the extent possible that you can help people understand what may be changing. And to give them as much information as you can, as early as you can, recognizing that there are times where you cannot share everything that's involved.
Right, I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. This is a good question. How would you recommend managing a discussion centered on questioning when you have some employees with more power and a larger voice supporting one side of the interdependent pair?
We had talked about this. I don't know, Erinn, if you want to start or.
I think that's kind of the challenge of every time you have a conversation with people, honestly. And I think that you can do some things to kind of mitigate that. So how do you start where everyone begins by having a voice? And you invite people in that way first, as a way to kind of set the stage that this is everyone's conversation. So that's one idea. Janice, did you have more to add?
No, I was going to say, so sometimes these very structured processes, like the power of questions, there's a book also called The Surprising Power of Liberating Structures, which also has very structured ways to converse, helps to democratize the situation. So that, and what we did here was we used chat. You could also use Post-it notes so that everybody writes down their questions and you do a round robin and everyone gets to ask. But it does also get back to developing trusting relationships. And I think that too is when leaders show their own vulnerability and, in appropriate ways. And when they apologize, when they have done, made a mistake, done something wrong that they need to correct, that also goes a long way toward people recognizing their honesty and their ability to move forward with the group. But I do think, so this whole idea of leading as a conversation, it is ongoing and it is daily. I think sometimes for those of you who are here, do you ever get to the end of the day? This is how I used to feel. And I think, what did I do today? I talked to people. I talked to people all day long. That was my job. And I realized when I read this article, that's your job. That is really your job, is to be talking to people, especially in this complex environment where there is so much going on. And something new is going to come from library administration, something's going to come from university administration. For those of you in public institutions, we've got the legislature, the Board of Regents, and it throws everything up in the air. And so it's just this constant conversation every single day.
Yeah. And every day is a new challenge and a new sticky issue. And then, like we said, as those come to us, you make a change here, it affects all these things here. And so you're going to have to keep shifting and changing those tensions over time, and being able to have some dialogue around that is so helpful.
that idea of interdependent peers is that there are so many in play at any one time. And so as Erinn said, if you make a shift in one, you may actually affect the others.
Well, unfortunately, we are out of time, but thank you again to Erinn and Janice for answering those questions and for their excellent presentation. It was such a pleasure to have you with us. And before we close the session, I would like to point out the evaluation survey that is available for you participants to complete. I'm certain the presenters would very much appreciate your feedback. You can also find a link to the evaluation in Schedule. It's labeled feedback survey and is directly above the session description. And again, we do ask you to please bear in mind the CALM code of conduct when you are filling out your feedback surveys. Thank you all for attending. We hope you enjoyed this presentation as much as I did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.